You know, there's a lot of love stories in mixed martial arts. Me and afternoon fight cards, Dustin Poirier and jumping the gilly, Kevin Holland and fighting every 2 months. But there's also Dana White and Instagram live sessions, because this past Thursday evening, late night, about 10 p.m. Eastern time, he went live on his Instagram once again on his jet back to Vegas, coming home from the White House meeting with the president regarding the July 4th card that is going to be happening next year. And not only did he briefly mention that that card is all but confirmed to be happening next July, but he also dropped absolute banger fight announcements, 5 of them with absolutely massive implications in every single one of them, and 3 of the 5 are for championship gold. And 2 of those 3 are mega super fights. So let's have ourselves a little chat about those fights, and at the end of the video, be sure to let me know what your thoughts are on these fights and give me your early predictions as well. We already knew that UFC 321 was happening on October 25th, 2025, the second pay-per-view in the month of October, and this one will be at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. And the main event is a huge fight because it's Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane for the heavyweight championship. That will of course be Tom Aspinall's first true title defense, even though he technically defended the interim belt, and he'll be taking on the former title challenger Ciryl Gane in the main event. But now we have a big time co-main event with gold on the line and a huge featured matchup as well. And the co-main event will be for the vacant strawweight championship of the world. More on that to come in just a few minutes. And the new champion at 115 pounds will either be Virna Jandiroba or Mackenzie Dern, number 1 versus number 5 respectively. For Virna Jandiroba, she has not lost a fight since October of 2021, so at the time in which this fight takes place, it will essentially be 4 years nearly to the day since she has tasted defeat, and since then she has won 5 fights in a row, all against ranked competition and progressively up the ladder. It started with Angela Hill in May of 2022. Then she went on to beat Marina Rodriguez. She went on to beat Lupe Godinez. She went on to submit former title challenger Maddalena. And in her most recent bout and first fight of 2025, she got a victory over another former title challenger, this time Yan Xiaonan. And although she is now 37 years old, it is very evident that she has entered her prime later than some of her counterparts, because she is doing the best work of her career, and that has earned her a shot to become the strawweight champion of the world. And when you look at her resume and the people that she's fought, her record of 22 wins with just 3 losses, having finished 15 of those 22 victories with 14 of the 15 by sub, she's arguably the most obvious number 1 contender in the entire UFC. And not only is this a chance for Virna Jandiroba to make her win streak 6, to become the strawweight champion of the world, but it is a chance for her to get revenge against Mackenzie Dern in a loss that she had to her in December of 2020, where she would lose via decision. And since that first fight, Virna Jandiroba went on to win 6 of her last 7, but for Mackenzie Dern in that victory against Virna in December of 2020, things have actually kind of went downhill from her since then, because she has a record of 5-4 over those last 5 years. But to be fair, it's not like this is an unearned title opportunity. She does ride a 2-fight win streak coming into this, and that was a victory over Lupe Godinez and a finish in January of this year against Amanda Ribas. And the other wins were against Angela Hill, Tisha Pennington, and Nina Nunes, and the losses were Marina Rodriguez, Yan Xiaonan, Jessica Andrade, and Amanda Lemos. So she has been fighting the best women in the world in the strawweight division over the last few years, just like Virna Jandiroba, except Virna has been able to put it all together in much cleaner fashion. Mackenzie will be 5 years younger than Virna, entering this fight at 32 years old, right around the typical prime for most UFC athletes, with a 15-5 record, 8 submission wins, and 7 decisions. She's one of the most accredited jiu-jitsu specialists that the UFC has ever seen, but will that be enough to take down Virna Jandiroba during the hottest stretch of her career and allow Mackenzie Dern to move to 2-0 against Virna and to have a gold belt wrapped around her waist to add to her mantle of numerous black belts that she has had wrapped around her waist? And the other fight that was added to UFC 321's main card was the number 2 ranked bantamweight Umar Nurmagomedov and the 8th ranked surging Mario Bautista. For Umar, this will be his first fight since losing the championship bout to Merab Dvalishvili at UFC 311 in January, and what would be the first loss of Umar's entire career, as prior to that he was 6-0 in the UFC, with his biggest win coming against Corey Sandhagen last August. He is 29 years of age, just now getting ready to enter those prime years, has a record of 18-1 with 9 finishes and 9 decisions, and it's evident no matter the strength of schedule, which is what a lot of people were giving him slack on heading into that championship fight against Merab, it's still still very much clear that he is an elite level 135-pound fighter. He even won the first 2 rounds of that fight against Merab before Merab was able to turn the tide and win the latter 3. And Mario Bautista may just be one of the most underrated ranked fighters in the entire UFC right now, and he is on an 8-fight win streak, and he capped that off most recently with a win over the UFC debutant and former Bellator champion Patchy Mix, where he would absolutely dominate that fight from minute 1 to minute 15 en route to a very convincing decision. And prior to that, he had wins over Jose Aldo, Ricky Simone, and Damon Blackshear, and alongside this 8-fight win streak, he had 3 in a row via first-round submission between June of 2022 and March of 2023, and all in all has not lost a fight since March 6th of 2021 at UFC 259. Mario's 32 years old, right in his prime, with a record of 16-2. Much like Umar, also has 9 finishes, 6 submissions, and 3 knockouts. And maybe worth noting that in his 2 losses, he has been finished in each, 1 knockout and 1 submission. This is a supremely high-level bantamweight fight, with Umar Nurmagomedov looking to bounce back from his first ever professional loss and keep himself in relevancy for title discussions. And for Mario, should he beat Umar Nurmagomedov, he will more than likely be the next bantamweight title challenger, at least behind Petr Yan, who I think should get the winner of Merab versus Corey coming up on October 4th. So those are the 2 big announcements for UFC 321. Be sure to give me your 2 early predictions for each of those down in the comments below. And now we move into Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. We've got 2 championship fights and an absolutely sick welterweight featured bout. MSG times UFC, they never fail to deliver year after year, and this one could be one of the biggest yet. And why do I say that with so much excitement? Well, that is because we have 2 championship fights, and both of them are literally super fights. Champion versus champion, well, kinda, sorta. The main event will feature the newly crowned welterweight king Jack Della Maddalena after dethroning Belal Muhammad at UFC 315 back in May, where he would win a 25-minute decision, and he will be taking on the former lightweight king who has the record for the most title defenses ever at 155 pounds, Islam Makhachev, who vacated his title in June for Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira to fight for that belt at International Fight Week in order for Islam to move up to 170 pounds and chase the goal of becoming a 2-weight world champion in the UFC. Jack Della Maddalena started his professional mixed martial arts career way back in 2016, in March to be exact, when he would have just been 19 years old, and he started 0-2. And both of the losses were by way of stoppage, a 3rd round TKO and a 1st round submission. But since then, he has not looked back. He has won every single fight that he has been a part of, and now finds himself entering Madison Square Garden as the welterweight champion of the world on an 18-fight win streak. He debuted in the UFC in January of 2022 after an insane fight on the Contender Series in 2021 and has gone 8-0 since joining the organization. He started his run with 4 consecutive first-round finishes, and that 4-fight first-round stretch would be capped off by a victory against Randy Brown via submission. Then he would enter the upper echelon of the welterweight division outside of the random short-notice fight against Basil Hafez, where he would have an absolute battle where he would edge out a decision victory there, and that upper echelon run would start with a split decision win over Kevin Holland. Then he would take on former title challenger Gilbert Burns and have the comeback of the year for 2024, and that is what would earn him the crack to face Belal Muhammad at UFC 315 in May, where he absolutely shocked the world, not in terms of him necessarily winning the belt, but in terms of the way in which he went about winning that title, because he absolutely controlled the pacing of that fight in every which way that the fight went. Jack was leading the dance against Belal Muhammad. And it's crazy because he became a UFC champion at just 28 years of age. He turns 29 on September 10th. I didn't even realize how young Jack was to already be a world champion in the UFC, but now he may just have his hardest test to date. And that is against one of the biggest stars and names in the entire organization right now, Islam Makhachev, who has a record of 27-1 and is riding a 15-fight win streak heading into this one. Which means that these 2 fighters, Jack Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev, are on a combined 33 3-fight win streak. Islam is 33 years old, right in his prime, and is coming off of 4 consecutive title defenses in the lightweight division that solidified him for the record in that weight class. It was 2 title defenses against the featherweight king Alexander Volkanovski, a title defense against Dustin Poirier, and then a short notice, literally one-day title defense against Renato Moicano due to Arman Tsarukyan having to be pulled from the bout. He has also finished Drew Dober, Thiago Moises, Dan Hooker, and Bobby Green, now known as King Green, en route to challenging Charles Oliveira for the title at UFC 280, where not only would he beat him as well, but he would finish him. As a matter of fact, Islam Makhachev since March 6th of 2021 against Drew Dober has fought 9 times, and 8 of those victories have been by way of stoppage. The lone decision was the first fight with Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 284 in February of 2023. Islam Makhachev is the number 2 ranked pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. Della Maddalena, the new welterweight champion, is currently sitting at number 8, and I already talked about the insane combined win streak that these two men are riding. They're fighting in the 2 most stacked weight classes in the UFC right now, present day. It doesn't get bigger and it doesn't get better than this super fight. Jack Della Maddalena, Islam Makhachev, headlining at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, New York, November 15th. 2025 UFC 322. Mark the calendars. And the co-main event super fight is what MMA fans and diehard fans like me have been clamoring for years, and it is finally going to come full circle. It's finally going to come to fruition. It's Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko, the 2-time flyweight champion, taking on Magnum Zhang Weili, the 2-time strawweight queen. This is arguably the biggest women's fight in UFC history, and yes, I realize there's been a ton of them. We have the very first fight ever between Ronda Rousey and Liz Carmouche in February of 2013, the first ever women's fight in UFC history. Those 2 women, of course, paved the way for where these 2 find themselves now, Valentina and Weili. We've had Amanda Nunes versus Ronda Rousey. We've had Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate. We've had Amanda Nunes versus Chris Cyborg. We've had Valentina Shevchenko and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. But in terms of 2 women with 2 legacies in 2 separate weight classes coming together, this is right up there amongst the best that we have ever gotten the opportunity to see happen. Valentina Shevchenko is 25-4-1, having finished 15 of her 25 wins, and even at 37 years of age, still proves that she is getting better and better and can make adjustments fight by fight. Since moving to the flyweight division in February of 2018 after having a multi-year stint at the bantamweight division that included a championship fight against Amanda Nunes, she has fought 13 times with a record of 11-1-1 in the 125-pound weight class, and the only loss was in the absolute shocking defeat handed to her by Alexa Grasso in the first of their 3 bouts. But Valentina would put a stamp on that rivalry with Alexa with a dominant decision win at Noche UFC last September, and then defended her flyweight title for the first time of her second reign at UFC 315, where Jack Della Maddalena became the champion at welterweight, and she did so by defending against the surging Manon Fior. So in total, Valentina Shevchenko has defended the flyweight championship 8 times across 2 separate title reigns, 7 on her first one and now 1 in her second reign, and now will look to make it her 9th title defense, taking on Zhang Weili, who across her 2 title reigns in the strawweight division has had 4 successful title defenses. She first became champion in August of 2019 by starching Jessica Andrade in 42 seconds in her home country of China, then defended the title against Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the best women's fight in UFC history, scratch that, mixed martial arts history, before losing the title to Rose Namajunas. But then she would get another crack at gold against Carla Esparza in November of 2022, where she would stop her in the second round via submission, and has defended the belt 3 times in her second reign against Amanda Lemos, Yan Xiaonan, and Tatiana Suarez, all via dominant 25-minute masterclass decision. She is 1 year younger than Valentina at 36 years old and has a record of 26-3, having finished 19 of those 26 victories, and she is arguably the greatest strawweight fighter of all time. I still would slightly give that edge to Joanna Jędrzejczyk due to her insane title run that she had. However, Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas are right there neck and neck with Joanna at this point, and Valentina is clearly the best flyweight women's fighter that we have ever seen. And after all of these years, all of their success and dominance across 2 different weight classes at the same time alongside one another, they will finally meet face-to-face in the octagon in Madison Square Garden. Find me a better 2 title fight run back-to-back with one another in recent UFC memory if we're talking legacy and implications. And lastly, we learned that the former champion Leon Edwards in the welterweight division will be taking on the fighting nerd Carlos Prates. The 34-year-old former champion Leon Edwards will enter this fight against Prates on a 2-fight losing streak. His most recent bout was against Sean Brady in March, where he would be dominated by Brady en route to getting submitted in the 4th round. And before that, he would lose his title to Bilal Muhammad. That happened in July of last year at UFC 304. Now, of course, we know that before that loss to Bilal, Leon was on an insane win streak, unbeaten streak, if you will, had defended the welterweight championship twice against Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington after dethroning Kamaru at UFC 278 in August of 2022 with the headshot heard round the world. But dare I say, this is a do-or-die circumstance for Leon now, because if he loses this one to Prates, not only will it be 3 losses in a row, but he will be moved much further down the totem pole. And in this welterweight division, as stacked as it is right now, I have a hard time envisioning a world where Leon could climb himself back into title contention, at least in the near future. But it is worth noting that this is the first true striker that Leon Edwards has fought in literal years. The last time he fought someone that predominantly approaches fights on the feet was against Nate Diaz in June of 2021, meaning that Leon has been prepping for wrestlers and grapple style heavy fighters for 5 consecutive fights in over 3 years. But enter the nightmare that is Carlos Prates, who has finished 17 of his 22 victories by vicious knockout. And that includes all 5 of his UFC victories thus far, including the one that just happened at UFC 319, where he would viciously knock out Jeff Neal via spinning back elbow with 1 second remaining in the opening round. And Carlos's only loss through his first 6 UFC bouts thus far was a short notice bout against Ian Machado Gary, where he would lose a 25-minute decision, but not before having the biggest moments of the fight go to him late in the 5th round, where he came close to finishing Gary. And that loss to Gary in April of this year was the first loss that Carlos experienced since June of 2019, meaning that he enters this fight against Leon Edwards, the former champion, having won 12 of his last 13 fights. He comes out of the Fighting Nerds camp that is arguably the biggest training camp going in the UFC right now, not necessarily in terms of success, even though they are all having insane success, but because of their popularity with the fan base. And if he comes in here and can beat Leon Edwards, and especially if he can somehow find a way to knock out Leon Edwards, he is right there in welterweight title contention alongside the names of Sean Brady, Ian Machado Gary, and Shavkat Rakhmonov. And it seems fitting that the UFC put this fight on the very same card that the welterweight championship in this division is being defended at the top of the bill between JDM and Islam Makhachev. So I want to get all of your thoughts on these massive fight announcements down in the comments below, alongside with your early predictions as we head into the fall calendar for the UFC. If you enjoyed my thoughts on these massive fight announcements, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new, because we are on the road to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and the goal is to hit that mark before the end of the year, and any and all support is greatly appreciated. Alongside my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements such as these, I also break down and preview the biggest and best fights heading into each card, and I recap the most meaningful results in the aftermath of every weekend. You can also join the discussion on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as like the Facebook page Verbal Sparring MMA, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where podcast episodes release there every Monday and Friday. Have a great week, and I will see you all in the next video.